Here we go. Alabama versus Texas in Tuscaloosa. Last year, a lot of people felt like Texas should have won this game. Yes, if Quinn Ewers would have not went out, you heard that what if scenario. But I'll give you this. What if the sky fell? We would literally all be dead. That's kind of how I feel about it. You didn't win the game. You played good enough to win it. But at the end of the day, you didn't get the result you want. This week, Texas is going into Tuscaloosa, and they get a chance to knock off Nick Saban and end this incredible 43-game non-conference win streak that they have. And where Texas played really well last week against Rice, and their defensive line looked stout. I think Alabama's going to get the upper hand here. You're walking into a hostile environment, Tuscaloosa. You're having to play the GOAT. They're going to show up and they're going to be ready. No doubt in my mind, Nick Saban is going to have this team ready to play. So I've got this game going 45-24 in Alabama's favor. Still have Texas making the playoffs, though. We got to break down exactly what it's going to take for Texas to be able to win this game, what it's going to take for Alabama to be able to hold on to this win. So let's look at it. We'll start with Texas, because that's the obvious one. That's the one everybody wants to see. What's it going to take for the upset? Well, you held Rice to 27 rushing yards last week. Again, your defensive line looked stout. The question is T'Vondre Sweat, who had a good game last week and kind of picking up where he left off last season with 29 total tackles, is he going to be able to start to replicate that success that he had last year? Or are we going to see him get into the backfield and cause havoc among these running backs and this quarterback? That's what I want to see. And then not to mention, I'm going to look at their defensive ends, specifically Baron Sorrell. For Texas fans, you might know who that name is. But this is a guy that got in the backfield and caused havoc last season and recorded 5.5 sacks. Yeah, caused 5.5 sacks. Couple pressures. There you go. You want to see Sorrell go into this game, get to Jalen Milroe, and get into that backfield. And this is going to be the key for Texas. You've got to make Jalen Milroe uncomfortable. You've also got to get in there and you've got to wreak havoc among these running backs that they have. Jace McCullen was right behind Milroe last week in terms of rushing leader. Yes, their quarterback was their rushing leader. You have Justice Haynes, Richard Young. Both of those guys are true freshmen in a big-time game. Texas can go in there and they can make a statement to these kids. They can say, welcome to college football. Welcome to the big leagues. That's what you want to see them do. Remember, Alabama, they don't have Jamar Gibbs this year. They don't have that solidified back that's going to go in there and cause Texas problems. So for Texas, you want to see them go in there, and you really want to see them be able to lock up the running game. Nick Saban, he wants to pound the rock this year. That's what he wants to do. He wants to bring that back. For Texas, you're going to shut it down because you can take their wide receiving core. Here's the other thing. Anthony Hill Jr., the true freshman linebacker, the 5-star linebacker that Texas got last year. Alabama wanted him. Oklahoma wanted him. Clemson wanted him. Everybody wanted this kid. You want to see him spy on Jalen Milroe. You want to see him stop Jalen Milroe. That's what you want to see out of Anthony Hill. So if you're Texas, those are your keys to win this game. Every single one of those, it's battling in the trenches, fighting in the trenches. You got to be able to beat Alabama's offensive line. Not really worried about Texas's offensive line. I think their offensive line is really good. Kelvin Banks. You've got Campbell. You've got Yumi Zulu. By the way, his brother just committed to Texas this week. I like the Longhorns offensive line. Not too worried about the protection for Baxter or Quinn Ewers. However, it is crucial that you protect your quarterback this year. So I look at Alabama. They come out After last season, Georgia wins the national championship again. And you know what? Alabama's got a chip on their shoulder. And they want to prove to everybody that the win last year, they could have did better. Well, they're going to do that. Like I said, 45-24, Alabama. Alabama went out there and touted the #1 recruiting class last year. They got Caden Proctor on the offensive line, the #5 overall player, #1 offensive tackle in last year's class. That's going to be a key for Jalen Milroe this season, but specifically this game. Is Caden Proctor going to be able to show up and hold off a Sorrell or a Sweat? Not to mention, the defensive line was a question for Alabama all year last year. What are they going to do to fix it? Well, Alabama's got a couple guys returning. You have Jaheim Otis, who had 29 total tackles last year and 1 sack. You had DJ Dale returning. You have Damon Payne Jr. Then not to mention in the recruiting class, you got the #3 overall player and the #1 edge rusher in that class, Keon Keeley. You flipped him from Notre Dame. You've got Johanze Pierre, the #28 overall player. You had James Smith and Quay Russo. You expect this Alabama defensive line to show up. You expect it to be dominant against that Texas offensive line. You've heard a lot of things about how this offensive line for Texas is good, one of the best in the country. Texas gets an opportunity to come in there and show that up. That's what I expect. Now, this quarterback controversy that I guess you've had in Alabama. It was late to name a starter. You had Jalen Milroe fighting Ty Simpson, or you had the transfer, Tyler Buckner from Notre Dame. Tommy Reese. You want to see what this offense is really made of. You're going up against a higher level Power 5 team. Before you get into conference play, this is going to tell you a lot about Alabama, a lot about what they're made of. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think Alabama has too many weapons for Texas to be able to contain, for Texas to be able to handle. But if you're Texas and you lose this game, there's no need to fear, because you can learn a lot about your team. You can learn a lot about where they need to improve. You can learn a lot about where your strong points are and where your weaknesses are, so that by the time you get to the Red River, or by the time you get to the end of the season when you're in the Big 12 championship game, because I fully expect Texas to be there, now you know how to be able to go out there, use those weaknesses to your advantage, and fine-tune your strengths. So Alabama 45, Texas 24. It's going to be a blast. I'm going to be in Norman, so I'm going to have to watch this game on my phone. But you can bet we will be keeping an eye on it. We're going to be talking about it this upcoming week. Alabama versus Texas. Alabama gets to say, no, not before you get to the SEC. So, guys, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and hit that subscribe button. Jump down in the comments below. Give me your score predictions. Give me your keys to the game, whether it's for Alabama or Texas. I want to hear from y'all, and maybe we'll highlight some of those on the upcoming show when we review the game and we review exactly what happened this past weekend.